mothers running the streets, defending their children, defending their honor, defending their pride.
We cannot continue, we cannot rebuild something that was already broken. We need to build something new.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle is shown on over 30 cable stations from Maine to New York City. On the internet at thestruggle.org. Think of that going on all day and night. That's the reality in Eastern Ghouta, Syria. Anti-Assad forces are being pushed back or are being forced to surrender. Things are not much better in other parts of Syria. Turkey has seized the section called Afrin from Syrian Kurds. We start in New York, where at a section near Times Square, there was a rally of hundreds in support of Syria 7 years after the start of the uprising. First, we'll have some still pictures and then video. So what are your thoughts on this day, the start of the 8th year of the democracy uprising, but also very difficult times in Ghouta and Afrin and so on?
Well, although the times are difficult and the people are, while we're speaking, are suffering and being killed and bombed and imprisoned in the cities that has been taken by Assad in Ghouta's area, we still have to come out and be their voice here in New York, and we will never stop fighting.
Hello, Free Syrians! Oh, that's very, very, very cool. Hello, New York City! That's more like it. Hello, New York City! Brothers and sisters? Yes, sir. Today marks the 7th anniversary of the Syrian Revolution. On March 15th, 2011, by show of hands, even the guys on the sidewalk, have you heard of the word Syria? Raise your hand. You're hearing the word Syria. A group of children, ages 9 to 13, went to a school and right on the wall, inspired by peaceful demonstrators in the Arab world. They wrote on the walls, "We want democracy and we want freedom." Now remember, these are 9 and 10 years old, like the children who are standing with us today. Hours later, the Syrian government detained those children by themselves, unclipped their nails, tortured them. And when their parents and families came to get their children, Assad's cousin, the president, Bashar al-Assad, told them, "You should forget about your children." Telling their parents, "You should forget about your children and go make new ones." And if you cannot make new children, send us your women so we'll make children for you. Thousands went in the streets defending their children, defending their honor, defending their pride, asking for freedom. In retaliation, the Syrian government opened live ammunition, killing hundreds of innocent civilians who want democracy and freedom and dignity, the very good principles that this country of the United States were built upon. Months later, when Assad was unable to crush down the revolution, Plan B was to bring terrorists. He brought Hezbollah, a terrorist militia in Lebanon, backed by Iran. Iran sent militias who were on a mission on a sectarian killing to wipe out the Syrian population. Months later, the regime released Al-Qaeda members who were in prisons, released them to form what we all know ISIS, pretending that these guys are the ones who's fighting, and we all know that is a lie. Is it a lie or not? Yes! Is it a lie or not? Yes! Months later, Vladimir Putin. Who doesn't know Vladimir Putin? Russia sent warplanes, striking residential areas, killing thousands of innocent civilians. The Assad regime in 2013, August 23rd, 2013, bombs Damascus with chemical weapons, suffocating thousands of children while they were asleep. Assad is dropping barrel bombs. Assad is hitting us with napalm weapons, with chemical weapons, with warplanes, with heavy artillery, with tanks. Assad is beheading young children. This is our fight. This is what the cause is all about. Am I right? Yes! Am I right? Yes!
I wrote this song in 2012 when, as an American, I watched the Assad regime use its own air force against its own people, and I could not believe that that was allowed to happen in 2012 in this world. I couldn't believe it, and I had no choice but to just express my anger, my sorrow for what was happening in a song. And I hope that we wake up as a world. I hope that we wake up to the fact that if we don't help people who are killed by their own government every day for years on end, that we're killing ourselves. And it could be us sometime when we need help here. And we have to help each other. And we can't let governments slaughter their own people.
There's another king killing his own people. Dreamers of the weary world, it's time we woke up and ring them bells from high inside the steeple. The dictator of Damascus wears a suit and tie, but his tank shells fill the sky, and his citizens seek shelter in their basements. The food is running out now, there are children without heat. Rockets force them into the street, where the sniper's bullet greets them on the pavement. Ayyuhala alam el naimu Fantas taikidu Hunaka hakim yaktulu shabaho Ayyuhala alam el naimu Fantas taikidu Fel takrau el ejeras aliyah. His name might mean the lion, but he acts more like a mouse, running with the rats inside his house. And the United Nations answers with its silence. He depends on his friends in Iran and Hezbollah, vetoes from China and Russia, who supply the weapons of the deadly violence. Oh, dreamers of the weary world, it's time that we woke up. There's another king killing his own people. Oh, dreamers of the weary world, it's time that we woke up and ring them bells high inside our steeple. I saw a baby boy last night, shrapnel in his chest. I was an uninvited guest, watched as his father did his best to ease his passing. Mothers of the world weep for the innocents who die, for the corrupt and vicious lies, for justice to open her closed eyes and come a-crashing. Oh, ayyuhala alam el-naibu Fantas taikidu Hunaka hakim yaktulu shabo Ayyuhala alam el-naibu Fantas taikidu Fel takrau el-ejeras aliyah. Turn away now, don't you be paralyzed. Watch the TV mesmerized. We can do more than empathize. We can help save human lives through concrete action. Oh, let's lift our voices to them now, wherever you may roam. Let them know they're not alone. Let your deeds sow the seeds of real compassion. Oh, dreamers of the weary world, it's time that we woke up. And there's another king killing his own people. Oh, dreamers of the weary world, it's time that we woke up and ring them bells from high inside our steeple. Let's let everyone in Syria today, let them know they're not forgotten. Let's hear your voices right now. Give them a shout. All those people in Eastern Ghouta in the siege, you are not forgotten. Our hearts are with you right now.
Everyone! Hey! One hand! Hey!
Some photos from a demonstration in Chicago and others from Moscow. In the U.S., Prince Salman of Saudi Arabia has started his 2-week tour. In New York City, a group went to the steps of City Hall in an attempt to persuade Mayor de Blasio to condemn Salman's visit. In the U.S. Senate, there was an attempt to pass the Sanders resolution that would have ended U.S. participation in that war on Yemen. It failed through a motion to table, 55 voting for the motion, 44 against. Oddly, both Connecticut senators voted no, not to table, and both Rhode Island senators voted yes to table and kill the Sanders bill. As if in celebration of the cowardly Senate vote, a U.S.-made plane flown by the Saudis blew up a car of Yemenis who were attempting to sell firewood. The politicians are prolonging the slaughter. I'd like to call an attention to an article I wrote for the magazine The Nation. It's called "Why Are U.S. Colleges Collaborating with Saudi Arabia?" It particularly focuses on the University of New Haven and Yale. We'll link to it at thestruggle.org. There's been some attention to Puerto Rico in the corporate media since after 6 months, thousands are still without electricity. Now, from the climate conference last month held by 350 Connecticut, Alexis Rodriquez, and portions of his talk on Puerto Rico.
Thank you. Thank you to the organizers for the opportunity to speak about Puerto Rico, a place near and dear to my heart, and thank you for being present. Puerto Rico is in a time of historical crisis, which is really the case for all of the Earth's species, and I don't mean that in any hyperbolic sense. I mean, this is the real deal, and oftentimes we look at hurricanes simply as just a natural disaster, but the social and environmental devastation that Puerto Ricans are facing is really a man-made disaster more than anything. Colonial subjugation, poverty and economic hardship, environmental injustice, and wide levels of corruption at the local level are just some examples of that man-made crisis that was the case well before Hurricane Maria and Hurricane Irma, and is the case now afterwards. So I may at times reference before and after. I am a believer that Hurricane Maria has changed. It is a moment in time that there is no going back to. It is a new period in time. And, you know, Hurricane Maria really exposed the extreme socioeconomic inequality that exists in Puerto Rico for those who couldn't see that already, and it exposed the differential neglect of the island's rural areas. For some context, Puerto Rico is a colony of the United States. It is a territorial possession that belongs to the United States, right? Time and time again, the Supreme Court has upheld insular cases that clearly describe this. Right? Puerto Rico is a colony of the United States. It does not have the tools that a state has in the United States. It does not have the tools that an independent country has around the world. Right? Puerto Rico is a subject to colonial subjugation and has been for 500 plus years. Right? And, you know, it's important to keep that in mind when we talk about Puerto Rico. When we talk about poverty in Puerto Rico, more than half the population is below the poverty line. More than twice as much as the poorest state in the United States, which is Mississippi. Okay? More than half of the population lives under the poverty line. When we talk about income inequality, the gap between rich and poor in Puerto Rico, we are talking about a place that is more unequal than any state in the United States, okay? More than any state in the United States, or territory for that matter, because Puerto Rico is not the only place in limbo here. And, you know, when we talk, Sean Sweeney had said a lot of good points. I don't know if he's still in the room, but I appreciate a lot about what he said in regards to the privatization efforts, in regards to the energy system. Mind you, my family comes from rural Puerto Rico, the inlands, and you know, a lot of my relatives still don't have electricity. We're talking about 5 months since Hurricane Maria hit, right? 5 months later and still have no electricity. We often hear about rebuilding Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico doesn't need to be rebuilt. Puerto Rico needs to be transformed. What existed beforehand, what existed before Hurricane Maria, you know, wasn't working to begin with. Puerto Rico has been in a recession for 11 years. That's not a recession. I use that term because that's what economists coined, but really, even an economist should know that 11 years in recession is a depression, right? Puerto Rico is in an economic depression. And what we've seen, again, even before Hurricane Maria, is that the system, its political and economic system, has expired. It no longer works. This was before Hurricane Maria, and the hurricane just made that more pronounced. The energy infrastructure of Puerto Rico was archaic and is archaic. Power plants of Puerto Rico are twice as old as the average power plant in the United States. The infrastructure has been neglected. When I mean neglected, by, you know, in regards to the maintenance of these power plants, in regards to any sort of investment to upgrade them. These are archaic energy systems, and 98% of the energy consumed in Puerto Rico is derived of fossil fuels. 98% is derived of fossil fuels. Let's also keep in mind that the cost of energy to the individual, the household, the consumer, is twice as much as it is, in some cases 3 times as much as it is here in the Northeast, okay? This in a place where most people live under the poverty line. To show you how ridiculous a lot of these efforts to privatize Puerto Rico are, in a meeting with potential investors, the governor of Puerto Rico flat out said to the investors that this is a smart investment to privatize Puerto Rico because consumers pay more than the consumers in the United States. So this is a good way for you to get rich. The nerve. We have people who still have no electricity. We have people, the suicide rates in Puerto Rico are damn near doubled since the hurricane. So the nerve to say that really just explains the mindset of the profiteering of the energy system here. This all in a place that has enough sun to meet its energy demand through solar power.
Talking about the town of Juntas up in the mountains of Puerto Rico, and also about one of these grassroots organizations that even before the storm had already been pioneering at least electricity generation for their own center. Could you talk about that some?
Sure, Juan. I mean, one of the things that I found most striking when I was reporting in Puerto Rico was, you know, we heard so much about what didn't work, and almost everything didn't work. The food system collapsed, the energy system completely collapsed, and is still in a state of collapse. But there were a few things that did work, and one of the things that worked in the community that you're referring to was solar power. And there's this community center in Juntas, which is called Casa Puebla. It's been around for decades. It's been at the center of a lot of major fights in Puerto Rico against open pit mining, against logging, against gas pipelines. But they've also been building their alternatives, and they've had solar panels on their roof for more than 20 years. And after Maria wiped out the electricity grid, it turned out that Casa Puebla's solar panels, rooftop solar panels, survived the hurricane-force winds, survived the falling debris, and so you had this beacon. Arturo Masal, who is the director of the board of directors of Casa Puebla, described it as an energy oasis. So in the midst of this sea of darkness, you have this community center that has light the day after Maria because their solar panels survived. And so people came there. It becomes this hub of people-to-people recovery. They start handing out solar lanterns. And it becomes this kind of field hospital where people plug in their medical devices. So this is, very intensely practical. And we saw some similar things happening on farms as well.
And Naomi.
And since I'm rightfully accused of always being grim, some photos of orchids at the New York Botanical Garden. That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.